Now on to my next guest. I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Hayes, partner, global climate change and decarbonisation leader with KPMG. Michael, thank you very much for making time for us today. It's a thrill to have you with us. You and I have been working together for a long time on this agenda, and it's amazing that we're here at the 4th Climate Finance Week. Thousands of people are watching what's happening this week, and it's a great buzz being here in AIB headquarters. Mike.
Yeah, I remember, Stephen, it must be 10 years ago since we first met, and we formed something called Green IFSC, where we started talking just between a very small group of people about this agenda, trying to highlight the importance of it, and to think, here we are 10 years later, and now it's front and centre of the political and economic agenda.
Yeah, and I think one of our earlier panels today, from the niche to mainstream, will be an understatement in the last two and a bit years. But Mike, you know, I don't want to embarrass you, but you've been at the core of what's been happening in Ireland, not just over the last decade, the last 10, 15 years. And firms that you would have been involved with as clients are now global leaders and actually being bought for a lot of money, because such is the expertise around them. But, you know, it'd be an understatement, I said, being passionate about the opportunity for Ireland in this agenda, but also in particular in the offshore wind sector. You were the first to coin the phrase that offshore wind to Ireland as the same as oil to Saudi Arabia. Given that fact that climate has risen, as you mentioned, to the top of the political and economic agenda, where do you see the offshore wind sector in Ireland today, please?
Well, Stephen, I've had the privilege of working with some incredible developers in the offshore wind space over a number of years. And I'll be honest to say, the first number of years, all the way back from when I was involved in the Arklow Banks project with electricity back around 2003, 2004, since then, it was a pretty frustrating experience up to recent times, because people like me and many others, I was not alone in this, we could just see the opportunity. It was just so big. We've seen the way offshore wind took off initially in the UK market, and we've seen the effect it's had on the eastern seaboard of the UK, in Scotland and down in East Anglia. I've seen it in Southeast Asia, and I kept pleading with different stakeholders, Irish government, that this was such an amazing opportunity given our resource. In some ways, I think, Stephen, things have worked out well for us. You know, the costs of offshore wind have fallen dramatically, and the market demand for green power has risen exponentially, and we've seen nothing yet. The message for me is very simple. You know, yes, we could have done lots of things differently over the last 15 years. That's the past. Let's look forward. This country has the potential and the interest, not just from developers, but from institutional capital, to make offshore wind a really fantastic sector in this country, not just in terms of delivering green power and dealing with issues like security of supply in this market, Stephen, but actually the formation of a new export economy. Yeah. However, many of us have incredible ambition and vision about what this can do, but there's some really hard yards to be put in, particularly around our grid infrastructure. I'm not blaming anybody. We have a challenge to get it right, and working with government and with EirGrid in particular, but also the whole area of foreshore leasing. You know, that is a challenging area, and lots of complexities. I won't go into it this afternoon, other than to point out that we really need to clear the pathway for developers because of what it can do to this economy. As I said, not just in terms of delivering the net zero ambition for 2050, even though I think that will become much, we'll need to revise that ambition before too long, but really in setting up a new green-based economic sector in this country.
And I suppose, Mike, if I can just go back a little bit in history to the early 2000s, you mentioned 2003, the Arklow, how did you, as a partner in KPMG, how did you find yourself in this space? Was it you went after, was it a random meeting with a client, or?
My career, Stephen, has been a story of luck and just being in the right place at the right time. Yeah. You know, and you know, back as far as 1999, I met this very small company called Eirtricity. They were actually called Eirtricity with an E in those days. They had to, for various political reasons, they had to change the name. What I discovered was an incredible bunch of people, you know, brilliant at what they did, but they had two things that were really important for me. They had ambition and entrepreneurial skills. It meant that they could take risk, and you had to take risk in those days in a measured way. What was really incredible is there was no market. Nobody had done this before. We didn't know how the financial community would respond. And one of the very early transactions I did would be laughable today in terms of its size, but it was hugely important. It was a 2 megawatt sale in Scotland, a project called Ardrossan. And the reason that project was so important is it determined for the first time, must be 2003, what financial investors would pay for an operating wind farm. That changed everything. Once we'd established that value, it really set the industry on its way. So I was fortunate, but once I discovered this industry and I discovered the type of people in it, they were people I could relate to. They are, my first love will always be developers. They have made a real difference, and I would have been stupid not to go on the journey with them.
And Mike, just to unpack that a little bit, the bunch of people, those bunch of people today are in major firms globally as leaders of those firms, driving the agenda within those firms, either with institutional capital firms, whatever it may be. Let's unpack those bunch of people. The group that you start, where do you see them today?
You see, I'm going to have a go at Irish media here, Stephen, just to be provocative for a second. We keep focusing on bad news stories, but one of the great stories is what these entrepreneurial Irish developers have done, not just in this country, but in all corners of the world. I've worked with Irish developers in North America, in South America, Australia, Southeast Asia, and in different parts of Africa. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. Irish developers and Irish capital have helped to actually really foster this amazing industry in all four corners of the world. It is a real Irish success story. And to be honest, we're only at the beginning. I think this is one of the advantages as a small nation. A company to be successful has to have ambition to scale globally. And the great thing is we have the talent in this country to do it. So all those people that you refer to are still doing it. But what's really encouraging me is a whole crop of new companies coming up, actually driving forward into new jurisdictions all the time. It's for somebody like me, I've been at this 25 years at this stage. I wake up every morning wanting to do more because of the people in this industry.
And that's fantastic, insight in terms of what gets you going on this. But I'm building on that, Mike, because moving away from developers right now, you've always been a big champion of innovation, of green innovation. And I've been in several meetings with you from a startup or a large firm, and just somebody has an idea and you want to kind of support that. Do you think the whole green innovation space will be key as we build towards COP? And what relevance for this agenda is there for Ireland, please?
So I'm going to take that on a number of different levels, Stephen. So the first point is I want to make a very, very clear statement. There's been lots of talk, and I know Fraser spoke about some of this, about the commitments and the alliances. But for me, we have to move beyond commitments and alliances. We have to move to action and delivering on COP26. The reality is we are not going to do it without focusing on innovation. And I'm delighted to say that I've learned only in the last couple of days that at COP26, green innovation is going to be one of the central themes that will be developed in Glasgow. In particular, UNFCCC, which is the organiser of COP26, is introducing an entirely new concept. It's something that I've worked and thought about, and I've agreed to collaborate with them on this. It's something called a Green Innovation Hub, which is actually tackling a real need in the industry. What this Green Innovation Hub is going to do in one place, it's going to bring together the innovators, the financial community, the big industrials where you need to pilot some of these innovations, science and academia, and this will all be done through a digital structure where we're going to bring all of these players together. We're going to focus on the hard-to-abate sectors. In particular, we're going to focus on transformative innovation solutions. So this will be announced at COP26, and that's just one innovation initiative. The other one was announced very, very briefly at the United Nations General Assembly Week by Special Envoy John Kerry, and it again is going to get major airing at COP26, and it's something called the First Movers Coalition. This is an effort to really take those innovations that have got to the stage of being commercially ready but do not have route to market or opportunities to take the solution to market. So what Senator Kerry, in his role as Special Climate Envoy for President Biden, is doing is he's working with some of the largest global organisations to use their purchasing power to catalyse some of these new green technologies. So both of those two initiatives, Stephen, for me are absolutely fascinating and not before time, because we really need them, not just for the success of COP26, but if we're going to be successful in getting to net zero. What does it mean for Ireland? Well, I probably give up 5 or 10% of my time working, and I can't do it with everybody, but working with some of the most exciting independent innovators. And I share their pain. Their pain is very simple. They're doing the work, they're innovating, but they have zero financial support, they have zero access to markets, they have zero access to the big industrial partners who can really help scale some of these innovations. So that's why this solution around the Green Innovation Hub, which will be announced, I think actually on the first day of COP26, is going to be very relevant for the innovation community in Ireland. And if you think about it, Stephen, innovation is something it's part of our identity as Irish people. And, I'm championing the issue globally, but I'm particularly passionate that Ireland takes a leading role. We're only at the beginnings of an innovation revolution. So yes, we have a range of technologies today that work and we keep trying to drive down the cost, but there are new technologies to be developed yet, new solutions as well as improvements on the older solutions. And it's not just about technology. Innovation is about different ways of doing business on this agenda as well.
Yep. And it's great to hear that about Secretary Kerry, because I was at an event during the summer where a slide was put up about, it showed how much America spends on research in the defence space versus, for example, the energy. And the defence space was in the tens of billions, energy was in 1 or 2 or 3 billion. So that's fantastic to hear that, because, and that was a point being made, that America has to spend more in this space. Mike, like COP actually is quite busy for you. I know you're going to be at COP yourself, but you're also going to be announcing a new financial product called Net Zero Equity at COP. What's that initiative about, please?
So I'll try to explain this in 60 seconds. So in the last session, we heard about the importance of mobilization of capital. Yeah. And the funny thing is, Stephen, there's loads of capital out there. Yeah. It is there in abundance. It's getting that capital to work in the right places. That is the missing bit on the climate agenda. And for 2 places in particular. One is what we call the Global South agenda. There are parts of that agenda in developing countries, particularly for those people in this world today who do not still have access to electricity, which is nothing short of a disgrace. Plus the innovation agenda. Neither public nor private money is getting to those areas today. So it is a systemic issue on the climate agenda. And over a period of years, I've been thinking a lot about this, and the focus has always been governments give us money, and then it's corporations give us money. I've become convinced that we're actually missing the biggest potential source of capital on planet Earth, and that is individual citizens. So this product, Net Zero Equity, and I've developed it with the help of the World Economic Forum and the insurance company Marsh are now contributing to the efforts as well, plus many other wonderful colleagues, too numerous to mention, around the world. We've developed this product which is going to say to individuals, it's very similar, Stephen, to the concept of war bonds. We're going to ask for your money for the climate agenda to go into the very, very, very high risk areas. But we're only going to ask you for a very small amount of your money, anywhere between $50 and $300. Mm-hmm. We've got lots of techniques developed for how we're going to collect this. But what's different here is 2 things. We're going to raise this in the hundreds of millions of individual investors. This is crowdfunding, if you like, on a different scale. But it should not be confused with crowdfunding, because the investment thesis and the investment message to the investors is we want those very small amounts of your money. We want to put it to work on this agenda, but we're saying to you, the risk is very high and the chances of you getting your money back in total, plus a return, are slim. You may get it back, but we're not giving you any guarantee or any surety you'll get it back. But there's something different in the world today, Stephen. Impact, social impact and climate impact matters. So what we're saying to all these people is that for your investment, you will, one day you'll get some of the money back, as was the case with war bonds. They did pay out eventually, but you are going to make a demonstrable difference to the climate agenda. And again, without getting into detail, we are going to be able to demonstrate to people like you, Stephen, if you give me $50 of your hard-earned cash, mm-hmm. you will end up getting something like an app on your very pretty Apple Watch, which will actually lead you directly to the project in Kenya or Rwanda, where that money is being used to fund a solar, a wind project, a microgrid, whatever the particular solution might be. So it's way out there as a financial product and an idea, but and literally this is something that I dreamt up in a hotel room in Houston about 3 years ago. But thankfully, I've now shared it and socialized with many people, and it's getting a lot of traction, a lot of interest, and we'll be formally issuing a paper on this through the World Economic Forum in about 2 weeks' time. And in fact, we should invite your audience to it. We're having a virtual session at COP26 to discuss this issue among some other related issues.
It's just fascinating hearing about what's happening at COP. Just before we get to a wrap-up question, you've spoken about innovation, you've spoken about green innovation, how you got started in this space, but you're always looking at new areas. So I suppose, can we get an insight into your mind right now? What new areas are you looking at now?
So I am looking at something new, and you will see a publication from KPMG that I'm authoring in a couple of weeks' time. So on the climate agenda, Stephen, we need to fight this battle on all fronts. And my concern is we've only been fighting it on 3 fronts, and I actually think there's a 4th one. So we've been fighting it on the capital agenda, which you've been very, very centrally involved over many years. We've been fighting it on the policy agenda, and we've been fighting it on innovation and technology. But there's one other critical ingredient to reaching net zero. It's people and it's human capital. We should not delude ourselves into thinking that just having the right policies, the money and the innovation will get us there. It is going to take a transformation of the way people live and work to achieve our ultimate climate goals. And when I look particularly at corporate organisations who've made these net zero commitments and who are taking action, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic they're doing it. But what they need to understand is you need to bring your employees on the journey. The challenge around reskilling, retraining employees across all sectors and all industries is absolutely huge. And we do talk about something, Stephen, called stranded people. We need to recognise that people will get left behind. And one of the things that I'm calling for is I'm calling for governments to focus on those stranded people. Lots of people will embrace this agenda and will be part of it. And I'm not for 1 minute saying that stranded people deny the reality of climate change. It's just for various reasons they will not be able to partake in the change of ways of working and the solutions that are necessary on climate change. We need to think seriously about that problem because it's very, very serious. This thing that we do, Stephen, every day around fighting climate change needs to be inclusive. We need to bring everybody on this journey.
It's absolutely fantastic, Mike, and there's a lot there. Just, I suppose, going to my last question, if I may, because I've, the different initiatives you've gone through, and as I said, all joking aside, you're going to be busy at COP, but you're obviously using COP as the platform to move things on to the next level. Ireland launched its first national sustainable finance roadmap today, Sustainable Finance Ireland, and the UN convened FC4S, supported by Skill in Ireland. And it's amazing just watching on social media and the emails flying in. Again, this is something you said a decade ago. Who would have thought today that you'd have Minister Donoghue the day before the budget making time to announce that the roadmap would be launched, but also announce in it that a new International Sustainable Finance Centre of Excellence to be co-developed with the UN will be established out of Ireland. All the different things you've been on the last 20, 25 years, some of the topics we've been talking about today, how important is it that the government is now coming out on the Ireland Finance Action Plan saying this is our roadmap? Now, it's ambitious but achievable was the expression Minister Donoghue used. How is it important that a state like Ireland has a roadmap now, please?
It's absolutely fantastic, Stephen, for one reason only. We have stopped saying that this is somebody else's problem. We have stood up as a country and we've said we can do something on this agenda. And congratulations to you and everybody that was involved. I had absolutely no hand, act or part in it. I welcome it and I endorse it all day long.
Mike, I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. I can't wait to be following you in COP. But look, thank you very much. Thank you for being a great friend over the last decade. We've done a lot together. And hopefully the next decade we're going to do even more. And we'll do it at a faster pace. So Mike Hayes, thank you for joining us during Climate Finance Week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.